Hi there, everybody. Destin Gary here. I am getting over a bit of a cold, so I'm going to do my best to work through it. But good to see everybody in chat. I know I just started the stream, but long story short, Microsoft has replied to the FTC's basically filing to Superior Supreme Court. I can't remember which one. And they've filed to block the Activision Blizzard deal, because they've heard that Microsoft was going to close the deal. Today, Microsoft has filed a 175-page document, and I will be reading through it live and highlighting the points that I want to highlight for the video that I end up producing later. So if you'll join me in going through this document, I thought I would just do this live so that we could read through it together. And mostly I'll be reading. I'll try and comment on chat if you happen to see something of note and I don't see it. But let's jump over to the talk scene right now. And if you haven't been following this, I have a small update initially when it was filed. And this is the legal documentation that has been now, I believe, made public so that everybody can see what is happening here. This case will be taking place in San Francisco, and it looks like it will be happening on June 22nd with the Honorable Jacqueline Scott Corley presiding the case. We know all of those things, and this is the defendant's memorandum of law in opposition to motion for preliminary injunction. So they're saying they oppose the preliminary injunction, and we will see what happens from there. Let me know if the stream's running well and everything like that. I think it is, but just in case something goes crazy. Table of contents. This is a long document, so buckle up. But sometimes, let's just take a sneak peek. Near the end, is there a bunch of redacted? Yeah, so we have about a bunch of redacted pages. Let's see what we got in here. So I started reading it earlier, and let's just get right into it. Here we go. Sorry, one second. I just want to see something really quick. I closed my monitoring window, so I have no idea if anybody's even watching. Looks like a few people are watching. Thank you for hanging out and tuning in. Let's get right into it. Thank you for all the hearts. 17 months ago, this is Microsoft. 17 months ago, Microsoft Corporation, the third place manufacturer of video game consoles, announced an agreement to purchase Activision Blizzard Inc., one of many video game publishers. Microsoft's motivations are simple. Its gaming division, Xbox, has next to no presence in mobile gaming, the fastest growing gaming segment where 94% of gamers spend time today. By contrast, Activision's King division makes popular mobile games such as Candy Crush, allowing Xbox to compete in this critical market. They've been very clear that they are making this purchase to get into mobile gaming. And I just heard the kids come home, so it might get crazy out there. Anyway, Activision publishes several popular video game franchises, including Call of Duty, which are profitable precisely because they generate sales on many different platforms. Indeed, the majority of COD sales, a significant part of Activision's revenues, occur on Sony's PlayStation, the dominant console that routinely outsells Xbox console 2-1. A U.S. senator has asked, why is the FTC blocking two American companies from competing against a Japanese company? I did see that. The FTC has never persuaded a court to preliminary enjoin a merger involving anything close to the facts here. Unlike in other merger contexts, the government gets no presumption of harm as to vertical mergers because they do not eliminate a competitor from the marketplace and are widely recognized to be pro-competitive. The U.S. antitrust agencies have rarely sought to enjoin vertical mergers and have lost every recent case when they tried. Indeed, the FTC is asking this court to be the first in decades to find a vertical merger unlawful. I'm going to highlight that one for sure. Moreover, unlike in every recent vertical merger case, the court needs not just rely on the defendant's claim that they will not foreclose their rivals and that the merger will increase output and lower prices. This is the exceptional case where the court can rely on actions rather than words. Microsoft's valuation of the deal was premised on making Activision's limited portfolio of popular games more accessible. And since the transaction was announced, Microsoft has sought to address any concerns that might be raised about the deal. Here's what Microsoft has done. committed to bring Activision games to Xbox Game Pass, a subscription gaming service offering numerous games for $9.99 a month, rather than up to $70 per game. Signed a binding contract to bring COD to Nintendo, which does not currently have it. Offered Valve, the popular PC gaming distributor, a 10-year deal for Activision content, which Valve declined. Now, they said they declined that publicly, and they said that Microsoft would have no incentive to withhold it from their service because they would lose money, basically. So they don't need to sign a contract. I don't know why it's redacted here, but maybe something else was said. Signed contracts to make Activision's games available on leading services that stream popular games to devices of consumers' choosing. Obliged itself as part of the global regulatory process sorry, to grant streaming rights to current and future Activision games to other cloud gaming services, regardless of whether Xbox decides to stream those games on its own service, and offered Sony a contract to guarantee access to Activision content on PlayStation for 10 years on equal footing with the Xbox console versions. Now, this is all stuff that we've known. We've seen all this before. Microsoft is just reiterating everything that has happened up to this point. This will be posted later. So this video will be posted later for viewing, and it will post the live stream VOD. And then I'm going to do a shortened down version. What I'm going to do is read through the whole thing and then highlight the parts that I feel are the most important and then go back to it. Anyway, continuing on. Microsoft's actions to try and give COD to anyone who wants it eliminate any conceivable claim of foreclosure. This deal will make popular content more broadly available and at a lower price. The FTC simply ignores these facts, claiming that it needs to offer only a scant proof to stop the transaction. The FTC is wrong. The government has the burden of proof in seeking the extraordinary and drastic remedy of a preliminary injunction prior to a full trial on the merits. FTC versus Exxon, because the FTC's central claim is that Xbox will withhold Activision content from rivals, principally the market leader Sony. It must also show that the combined firm would have the ability and incentive to foreclose competitors. By the way, I'll read any super chats, but I'm doing my best to read the document and be just like on point for people watching. And the FTC must show that such foreclosure is likely to substantially lessen competition in a properly pleaded product and geographic market. On each of these issues, the FTC must show that the evidence raises questions going to the merits so serious, substantial, difficult, and doubtful as to make them fair ground for thorough investigation, study, deliberation, and determination. So I like that. So basically, the onus is on the FTC to prove that this is so damaging that that like they have to block the deal. And I don't think they're going to be able to prove that. The FTC cannot come close to carrying its burden. After 18 months of investigation and litigation, including 56 investigational hearings and depositions, and the production of nearly 6 million documents, the FTC offers only a minuscule collection of incomplete quotations in support of its motion. The record will decisively refute the FTC's claim. Here we go. First, there is no evidence to support the FTC's central theory that Xbox will take COD away from PlayStation. The FTC does not cite a single document or witness even suggesting this will happen. On the contrary, Jim Ryan, the CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment and the chief commercial opponent of this deal, said privately on the day it was announced, blank. Now, we don't actually know what he said privately, but we do know that he said to Lulu Cheng Maservi that I don't care about Call of Duty. I just want to block your merger. So we know that was said publicly, but apparently there was another statement made here. Withholding COD would harm Xbox. It would just pardon me one second. Actually, hold on. Withholding COD would harm Xbox. It would contradict the valuation the board relied on in approving the deal, which assumed profits from continued PlayStation sales. It would cut off a highly lucrative income stream to one of Microsoft's competitors, I'm assuming. I don't know what's redacted here. It would cut off a highly lucrative income stream to one of Microsoft's divisions. I don't know. And it would make COD a worse game and enrage the gaming community because much of the game's popularity stems from the way it brings together players who use competing consoles. It is therefore unsurprising that every single worldwide regulator that has examined the deal other than the FTC has rejected this theory, including both the European Union and the UK's CMA. Now, if you'll remember, the CMA didn't find any worry about console harm. Both the EU and the CMA agreed that there were possibly cloud gaming issues. And for the EU, Microsoft said, oh, that's fine. We'll just let anybody have the game on cloud if they want it. Like no license fee, you can just have it. If they buy the game, they can play it on your cloud service. So it was a little bizarre that it was blocked by the CMA, and they're currently in litigation for that case, appealing to the tribunal. My wife's with the kids. Yeah. Can you hear the kids? If I gotta go, I'm gonna text my wife really quick and just make sure everything's okay. Let me see here. All right. You can't hear the kids? Okay. Well, my son's freaking out like right outside the door. My wife's got it under control, but if she needs me to go, I'm going to bounce. Okay. But anyway, let's continue on. Second, even assuming Xbox were to withhold COD from PlayStation, it would not harm competition. The acquisition of a single game by the third place console manufacturer cannot upend a highly competitive industry. COD may be popular, but it is just one game. Something redacted. I assume it's the math that the CMA got wrong, where they basically said, here's the math proving that it would be totally fine. You know, anyway. Oh, very warm today. Hopefully I'm not getting a fever. Anyway, even if the merger were to cause every PlayStation owner that played COD for as little as 2 hours per month to buy an Xbox, a wildly implausible scenario, PlayStation would still remain the console leader. Put simply, for closing access to COD would at most put a small dent in PlayStation's massive lead, making the market less concentrated. Defendants are aware of no case where a court has blocked a merger to protect a dominant firm's position. And that's the whole argument about this case, right? Why are you protecting a Japanese company from two American companies who want to merge together? And most of the arguments are about, well, how can we protect PlayStation? They're a Japanese company and they're the market leader. And that's the argument that Microsoft is making, right? Third, the FTC has failed to identify relevant antitrust markets, dooming their entire case. Potential anti-competitive effects can be measured only in a properly defined market, but the FTC has replaced sound economic analysis with result-oriented contortions to meet its litigation needs. And that's absolutely right. If you read it, they're just like making up terminology that, and I don't know. I don't think that's going to go over very well. As one example, the FTC claims that gaming PCs and Nintendo's consoles, both far more popular than Xbox, are not in the same market as PlayStation and Xbox, even though both the economic evidence have said the opposite. Why does the FTC contradict in this respect? Because reorganizing Nintendo and PCs as part of the market would destroy the FTC's flimsy foreclosure theory. Oh man, I really like that one. Why? Nintendo has been successful for years without COD, and as the dominant PC game store, Valve's Steam, COD cannot be essential to competition if market participants thrive without it. Fourth, the FTC has literally no factual basis for its claim that the merger will harm competition in the supposed markets for multi-game library subscription and cloud gaming services. Among other things, there's absolutely no evidence that Activision content would put its content on those services without the deal. To the contrary, Activision views such a step as anathema, I don't know that word, to its business strategy. Like bad for its business strategy, I assume. The transaction will thus benefit consumers by bringing Activision content to Xbox Game Pass for the first time. And I think that's a big draw for a lot of people. Shout out to Destin L. Thanks, Gerald. I'll take it. Finally, the equities cut sharply against injunctive relief. The merger agreement expires on July 18, 2023. The injunction sought by the FTC would thus almost certainly scuttle the transaction. And that's really important. Basically, what they're saying is, hey, you're going to kill this deal by filing right now. Anyway. Such private injuries are entitled to serious consideration in balancing the equities. Moreover, there is no need for a preliminary injunction because the FTC could obtain effective relief at the end of the administrative process if it prevailed. Microsoft intends to operate Activision similarly to other recent acquisitions, whose studio and creative operations remain separate and continue to build games as they had done pre-acquisition. There's a whole conversation there about how Microsoft probably should have gotten a little bit more involved with some of the games, and they're reevaluating that. But anyway, that means divestiture would be possible if it ever proved necessary. So they're willing to like separate in some capacity, I imagine. Is Fratanga in chat? Why is everybody bringing up Fratanga? Anyway, the gaming industry, background. Sorry. The court could deny. Okay, here we go. The court should deny the FTC's motion for a preliminary injunction. Here we go. The gaming industry. Gaming is one of the fastest growing and most competitive industries in the world. There are 3 billion gamers around the world, and 4.5 billion are expected by 2030. Gaming generates hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue each year, more revenue than music and movies combined, and is projected to continue to grow still more. Seeing this rising demand, new and established companies are competing fiercely by regularly releasing new games and continuing to innovate new ways for gamers to play. Activision is a well-known game developer with popular titles such as COD, Diablo, and World of Warcraft. But Activision is not the biggest or most successful publisher. And the size and pedigree of a publisher is no guarantee for success. Many popular games were unexpected breakout successes by small independent studios. Many highly anticipated and well-funded games are busts. Redfall. Gamers can play on many different devices. The 3 major gaming consoles are the PlayStation 5, the Nintendo Switch, and the Xbox. But consoles now represent the smallest share of video game revenue. More gamers play on PCs and substantially more play on mobile devices, the fastest growing segment. As a result, the industry is exploring how to expand beyond the traditional model of selling individual games. Some companies have great success with free-to-play games, which allow gamers to download the game and then decide whether to make in-game purchases as costumes or special powers. Free-to-play games have allowed small independent companies to grow quickly. For example, Epic Games' valuation has increased from $1 billion in 2012 to over $30 billion, powered by the 2017 launch of its flagship free-to-play game, Fortnite. Free-to-play games are a key part of Activision's strategic vision, and it has successfully launched free-to-play versions of popular games like COD. Good to see everybody. Reading super chats, just saying hi to chat every once in a while, but otherwise I'm trying to stay focused on the document. So thanks for walking. It is temporarily blocked, Spider-Man 356. Well, this case continues. So yeah. Innovation is also occurring in distribution. In 2017, Xbox launched Game Pass, a subscription service allowing consumers to play a library of games for $9.99 a month rather than having to purchase each individual title. Xbox invests heavily in Game Pass, making its own new games available in the service immediately upon release. So-called day-and-date releases. Although this means Xbox loses revenue on the sales of individual game titles, Xbox believes that Game Pass will ultimately prompt subscribers to engage with a variety of games and spend more overall. But others in the industry are more skeptical, and then they probably go over some of the stuff we've covered on this channel. Why do you keep saying blocked, King Scotto? I don't think King Scotto understands. It's temporarily blocked because the judge has said we're blocking it until this court case goes through. And Microsoft's making an argument like, look, if you do that for too long, you're going to kill the deal. So it's I mean, you're right. It's temporary block, but I don't know if you're touting that as a victory or what you're claiming by spamming the emoji. Anyway, continuing on. Sony primarily puts old games on its service, forcing customers to pay high per game fees to access new content. $70 games, basically. But that's the industry standard. So, yeah. Last, some companies are experimenting with delivery of games through cloud gaming streaming, which runs games on remote servers that gamers can access on consoles, PCs, mobile devices, or TVs. The idea is to let gamers play games on less highly powered and more affordable devices. Oh, King Scotto saying it's not going through. It's going to be blocked. Okay. We'll see. I don't think so. The idea is to let gamers play games on less highly powered and more affordable devices, particularly salient in less developed nations. They got to work on the internet, but yeah. Several companies, including Xbox, Amazon, Nvidia, and smaller upstarts, have experimented with different forms of cloud gaming, but the technology remains challenging, particularly for latency-sensitive multiplayer games. That's right. Gameplay is bulky, and it has proved hard to generate consumer demand or consistent profits. Here, too, they prove the profit thing, I'm guessing. Likewise, Sony Group's CEO has admitted that cloud gaming faces substantial technical difficulties and is very tricky from both a financial and technological standpoint. Yeah, they released that article where they're being like, oh man, cloud gaming is really hard. And the funny part is that helps Microsoft's case, because cloud gaming was the only thing that anybody was able to point to that would actually cause an issue. Continuing on. Sony's dominance. Sony is a gaming giant. Its gamer base is 2 times as large as Xbox's worldwide and 50% larger in the US. Sony's PlayStation has been the leading console both worldwide and in the US for over 2 decades and through 5 console generations. As a game publisher, Sony's in-house developer PlayStation Studios is responsible for major hits like God of War, The Last of Us, and Spider-Man, most of which can be played only on PlayStation. As a purchaser of third-party games, Sony pursues exclusivity, like Final Fantasy, everything. Sony dwarfs Xbox on exclusives for now. And then all this is redacted, but they're talking about Final Fantasy 13, or Final Fantasy 16, etc. We know that. So like a lot of this redacted stuff, it's stuff that we've already talked about over the last year. So if you haven't been following the channel, then that is where it would be. Anyway. Xbox's position by contrast. Xbox's console has consistently ranked third behind PlayStation, first, and Nintendo, second. Xbox has thus pivoted to a different business strategy of making games more accessible, and they've done a great job at that, in my opinion. As noted above, Xbox invests heavily in Game Pass. For years, Xbox has tried to get a foothold in the mobile gaming, but has had no success. And they're since day one, they've said, we want to do this for the mobile market. Thank you, Barbell, for the kind words. The transaction. Against this backdrop, Xbox and Activision determined that together they could significantly improve gaming and increase Xbox's competitiveness. Xbox's vision is to expand choice for gamers and developers by making games more widely accessible on Xbox Game Pass and on mobile devices. A key driver of this merger was Activision's mobile gaming business, which includes popular games like Candy Crush Saga and COD Warzone, a free-to-play variant. Acquiring these mobile games would enhance Microsoft's ability to compete in the fast-growing industry segment. On January 18, 2022, Microsoft and Activision announced the merger. Regulators around the world have been reviewing the transactions ever since, and Microsoft has tried to accommodate any concerns they raised. However, speculative those concerns may be. As noted above, Microsoft has signed a 10-year agreement to bring COD to Nintendo for the first time since 2013, and they've basically given everybody access to the mobile versions. Not mobile, but you know what I mean. Anyway. Do we have a moderator in chat? Slap those quads. Everybody really liked my Alex video, I guess. It has offered a similar agreement to Sony that would preserve Sony's access to the game, but blank it. I don't know why is this stuff redacted? They're talking about COD. Anyway. But Sony has refused the deal, instead focusing on trying to derail a transaction that would strengthen a rival. Well, yeah, I mean, that's their job, right? Xbox offered a 10-year agreement to keep COD on Valve, the popular PC game platform, but Valve turned down the agreement as unnecessary. Separately, Xbox has entered 5 separate 10-year agreements with cloud gaming providers Boostroid, NVIDIA, Enware, and Ubitus to ensure that all Xbox games, including Activision games, can be played on their services. In addition to those agreements, during the European Commission's regulatory process, Xbox committed to grant streaming rights to Activision games to other cloud gaming services, regardless of whether Xbox ultimately decides to stream those games itself. As a result of those efforts, all but one foreign regulator to pass on the issue has cleared the transaction without exceptions. Without exceptions. I mean, I don't mind if people say slap those quads. I don't see anybody saying anything too crazy, right? Anyway. As a result of these efforts, all but one foreign... Okay, we read that. The lone exception in the UK is CMA, but unlike the European Commission and other global competition authorities, the CMA rejected the FTC's core theories of harm here, tied it to console foreclosure and subscription service foreclosure. Its only objection to the transaction was that it might harm, at some point in the future, the evolution of cloud gaming. Xbox is currently appealing that decision. This proceeding, after investigating the transaction, the FTC filed an administrative complaint on December 8, 2022, alleging that the merger violates Section 7 of the Clayton Act. The FTC alleges that Xbox will withhold access to Activision games in 3 markets: high-performance consoles, multi-game content library subscription services, and cloud gaming subscription services. Except they've cleared all that stuff. The FTC denies the high-performance console market to include only Xbox and Sony, excluding even Nintendo, the second most popular console maker. The FTC denies the geographic market as the U.S. defines the geographic market as the U.S. The FTC claims this foreclosure is reasonably likely to substantially lessen competition in relevant markets. The FTC makes no allegations of harm to competition in any game publishing or distribution market or involving PC or mobile gaming, because they can't make that argument. The administrative hearing on the FTC's complaint was scheduled to begin August 2nd, 2023. The FTC filed, on June 12th, 2023, the FTC filed this lawsuit seeking to enjoin this transaction until its years-long administrative process concludes. So basically, what they've done is they're trying to block it for years. And Microsoft's saying, look, if you do that, the deal's dead. We can't just keep this tied up in legal nonsense. Like, the FTC could theoretically litigate this to death and just never have to prove their actual point, because their case is weak. So their plan is, okay, look, Microsoft, we're going to try and tie you up for another year. And Microsoft's like, well, if you do that, the deal's dead. Like, you're killing a deal that you have no evidence is bad. And if FTC does that, that's like, it's kind of messed up, right? That's messed up in my opinion. Like, if you want to win at the case in August. This way of winning, just tying it up in litigation, that's not the right way to do it, in my opinion. Bring a strong case, which you've been working on for like a year. You have 6 million documents, and then win that way. Anyway, let's go. Legal standard. The FTC is pursuing only a vertical theory of harm. In other words, it is challenging Xbox's acquisition of an input rather than the consolidation of 2 firms in an area of overlap, such as game publishing. As a result, the burden of persuasion remains with the government at all times. To satisfy its burden, the FTC must first determine the relevant market, which in turn requires identifying both 1, the relevant product market, and 2, the relevant geographic market in which the anti-competitive effects will allegedly occur. If it defines a proper market, the FTC must then prove that the merger is likely to substantially lessen competition in the relevant market, and they can't prove that, which is why they're just saying, we'll just tie it up in the courts, and they'll have to call it quits. It's really, really like bad. Bad luck for the FTC. You can't win in the court, so you win by using the court to tie up the deal for like at least another year. And Microsoft's just like, okay, like we got to recoup our $70 billion. They're already like $3 billion into this thing. Anyway. Section 13 of the FTC Act authorizes federal district courts to preliminarily enjoin a challenged merger upon a proper showing that weighing the equities and considering the commission's likelihood of ultimate success, such action would be in the public interest. This standard requires a court to determine the likelihood that the FTC will ultimately succeed on the merits and to balance the equities. A sufficient likelihood of success requires no more than mere questions or speculations supporting allegations of anti-competitive conduct. The FTC meets its burden only by raising questions going to the merits so serious, substantial, difficult, and doubtful as to make them fair ground for thorough investigation, study, deliberation, and determination. The court must exercise independent judgment and evaluate the FTC's case and evidence on its merits. I'm going to highlight that part. If the FTC can establish a likelihood of success, a court must then weigh the public and private equities. Public equities include the merger's pro-competitive benefits, harm to the merging parties if the merger is enjoined, i.e. private equities, are also entitled to serious consideration. And in weighing these concerns, a court must keep in mind that the issuance of a preliminary injunction is an extraordinary and drastic remedy. Even where an injunction may be warranted, any less intrusive alternatives should be considered. Argument 1. The FTC is unlikely to prevail on the merits because it cannot prove a likely substantial lessening of competition. No one has proved that. No one has argued that. Most places have said, we will prove this without any sort of restrictions. The EU was the only place to say, well, you got to fix your cloud gaming verbiage in here so that other people can do it. Microsoft said, okay, sure. Because for them, it's about the mobile market, according to their own arguments. Anyway, the FTC has failed to identify a relevant antitrust market. To meet its burden to show a substantial lessening of competition, the FTC must first define the relevant market in which anti-competitive effects will occur. The FTC versus Qualcomm courts determined the outer boundaries of a product market based on the reasonable interchangeability of use or the cross-elasticity of demand between the product itself and substitutes for it. Within a relevant market, products need not be fungible. Rather, the overarching goal of a market definition is to recognize competition where, in fact, competition exists. By those metrics, the FTC's proposed markets fail entirely because Sony is winning. When will the deal go through? I think if they... So there's a question in chat from Arnie who said, when will the deal go through? I think if this injunction is like let go or whatever they would do, I think they close it at this point and they figure out the UK later. Anyway, this month, I think it would be this month. Nintendo and PC compete with high performance consoles. I agree. I would think that Nintendo is a competitor for Microsoft and Sony. Like Legend of Zelda is one of the fastest selling games of the year. So yeah, it's about the games, not the hardware so much, right? Nintendo Switch and PCs compete with high performance consoles. The FTC offers two unduly narrow proposed definitions of its high performance consoles market. The FTC primarily proposes that PlayStation and Xbox alone compose the entire console market, and then alternatively adds Nintendo Switch, but still excludes PCs. Both Nintendo and PCs are economic substitutes that must be considered in any relevant market. I agree with that assessment. Nintendo. Well, L. Paul says not this month. My theory is that this case finishes and the judge says, okay, there's no more temporary block, and then Microsoft closes and they deal with the litigation later. So if this temporary blockage is removed, then I think they were going to close because that's what they've been working on. So the sooner this goes through, the better. Now, if I'm incorrect in that theory, let me know why. Nintendo, there is no basis for excluding Nintendo. Agree. By excluding Nintendo, the FTC inflates Xbox's market share. It also conveniently excludes a key competitor that has thrived without Call of Duty for a past decade. Interesting. In response, the FTC offers its expert that Nintendo's Switch is so differentiated along price, specifications, and content that it is in a different product category other than the two consoles. To the contrary, Xbox and Sony compete with Nintendo and with each other on all of these features. For example, the entry-level versions of the current Xbox and Nintendo consoles are offered at the same price point, about $300. Moreover, while the FTC makes much of Nintendo's supposed technical differences from other consoles, it ignores that Xbox and Sony also differentiate their consoles based on performance. The substantial overlap in these three consoles' content libraries further demonstrates that they compete. There's a lot of games that come out on everything. Anyway. Many of the most popular games on PlayStation and Xbox consoles are also available on Switch. Example, Bailey rep. Anyway, to the extent there are differences, the FTC fails to show that the difference is the result of Xbox and PlayStation games not being available on the Switch, as opposed to the many Switch exclusive titles. We have a super chat from NRXIC. Game dev here. Why has the gaming media completely ignored the CMA's and FTC's lack of understanding of the console market and gaming industry? I would argue that people like Derek over at Tweaktown have definitely covered off on that, NR. And I've actually seen a lot of coverage about that. It's there if you look for it. Yeah. A lot of people have criticized them for this differentiation where they've, like, you remember when they did the graph where they showed only PlayStation and Xbox in the industry, and then Microsoft's like, okay, we want to go with that argument. Here's our market share. It's like nothing versus PlayStation. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Everybody knows it's nonsense. And they've been criticized for it. And that's why even the CMA said the console market is nonsense. Like, there's no worry about that. Anyway. Many of the most popular games on PlayStation and Xbox consoles are also available on the Switch. To the extent there are differences, the FTC fails to show that the difference is the result of Xbox and PlayStation games not being available on Switch, as opposed to the many Switch exclusive titles such as Mario and Zelda. Yeah, there's great exclusives. But anyway. PC gaming. The FTC is likewise wrong to exclude PC gaming, which offers specifications and features comparable to or even greater than those offered by consoles. Yeah, think about PC gaming. Most games, if they were running on PC or they're available on everything, they run best on PC because you can build whatever you want. Everybody keeps saying blocked like it's some sort of own, like it's a legal case. Look, if the case is blocked, I get to make content. If the case is not blocked, like right now, it's still it's temporary blocked. I get to make content. You can say blocked all you want. I just sort of find it funny. You're like, oh, the case was blocked. Like when you were all celebrating that the CMA blocked the case, it's dead. And then it certainly was not dead. So you can spam it all you want. There is also substantial catalog overlap. Well, don't spam it so much that it's annoying to chat. But yeah, I don't care if you say blocked. You just look ridiculous. There's also substantial catalog overlap. In 2022, all but one of the top 30 Xbox titles and all but 3 of the top 30 PlayStation titles were available on PC. Finally, even accepting that Nintendo and PC gaming are differentiated from Xbox and PlayStation in certain ways, including with respect to price and qualities, that does not decide the market definition question. That products are differentiated, even in ways that some customers prefer, does not negate interchangeability, because the relevant question is not what solutions the customers would like or prefer, but instead what they could do in the event of an anti-competitive price increase. As just explained, the evidence shows that Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and PCs all serve as substitutes and compete. That's absolutely true. We all know the gaming market, at a bare minimum, is those sectors. You start adding the cloud gaming sectors like the NVIDIA, cloud gaming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera in there. I still think the deal goes through. I've said since day one that the deal goes through. They have to prove something. Yeah. Tanga says, love your content. Keep it up. And your Alex video was amazing. I could have did it a little bit better. I should have edited it, but I don't have a ton of time usually. Today, my wife's being very amazing and letting me stream for a little bit. So yeah, let's see how far we can get in. Let's try and get through like half of it. And then maybe I do the recap video later. Multi-game content library subscriptions and cloud gaming subscription services are not relevant product markets. Multi-game subscription services such as Game Pass or Sony's PlayStation Plus are not their own market, but rather an alternative way for consumers to pay for console, PC, and mobile games that are otherwise offered as standalone buy-to-play or free-to-play games. Accurate. Oh, I have to ask Hogue Law why they do this, because sometimes they have like text that I can highlight and then they go to like a screenshot or like a scan of the document. Anyway. So we jump, I don't know where the starting point is, free to play games. And then it's rejecting, narrowing of a market to consideration of a subscription based payment model without explaining why the market is not instead the broader video game market generally. Okay. And then a bunch of redacted stuff. I haven't seen anything jump out at me. So there's the breakdown from Foss Patents and Post Up, I think, have done some breakdowns. They're like, oh, there's some hard hitting stuff in there. I haven't seen a single thing yet. We're 18 pages in of 175, and I haven't seen anything of note. Yeah, there's a lot of people watching. Maybe I do a thing on Saturday. I'll have to sort it out with, my wife, but yeah. That cannibalization risk is why many game publishers, Activision included, do not embrace the subscription model. Cloud gaming subscription services. The FTC's proposed cloud gaming subscription service market is similarly incoherent. I'm going to drink some coffee. As an initial matter, cloud gaming is not a separate product. It is a euphemism for a technology that allows for a game to be streamed from an external source, such as the cloud, rather than downloaded onto a device like PC or console and played natively. Yep, that's correct. Shadow Demon says, will you allow for questions about the Summer Game Fest after you review this document? Thanks. Love your content. You can ask me whatever you want, man. Or man, or whatever. I'm pretty much an open book. So yeah, feel free. In addition, if you super chat, I'll read it at an appropriate time. But yeah. In addition, the FTC's proposed market includes some multi-game subscription services like Game Pass that offer cloud streaming of console games as features for subscribers who typically use it to try games before downloading them. And thank you for the super chat, Shadow Demon. But it also includes other distinct services like NVIDIA's GeForce Now that allow consumers to stream games they already own on PC. The FTC provides no explanation for how those products are substitutable, particularly given its own argument that consoles and PCs are distinct markets. So they haven't done a good enough job of defining that. I don't wish I was Hogue Law. I would rather have Hogue Law come on here and be the expert that he is and read this documentation. I don't purport to be a lawyer. I have no legal expertise whatsoever. I just really enjoy reading these documents and then going through them. And when I have questions, what I'll actually do is I will bring somebody like Hogue Law on or Michael Pachter, and I will ask them as the experts who've done this for years to actually explain it to me. So like, I think Irvin meant that as a dig, but like truly, I don't think I'm Hogue Law, and I don't purport to. I'm just like you, except I am crazy. And for some reason I will read a 175 page document, highlight the stuff that I find interesting, and then put out that video because I've found this case fascinating and I've learned so much about the legal process. Yeah, I'm just a guy. I've learned so much about the legal process. I've really enjoyed doing the coverage for the channel. The channel's been very receptive to it, and I've really, really enjoyed it. Anyway, continuing on. Beyond that, cloud gaming is entirely unproven. While the technology has been around for some time, it has never seen significant demand, and predictions about its future development and Xbox's role are conjectural. Conjectural. Oh my goodness, that's a tough one for me. Even assuming that perceived harm to a future market is relevant, the FTC itself has recognized that projecting harm in future markets can be difficult, must be strongly rooted in evidence, and requires considerable evidence that the markets will emerge. And we don't know what's going to happen with cloud gaming, right? Oh, Tino, I totally do. And that the merger will result in substantial lessening in competition, which nobody's been able to prove. Even the CMA went back and said, We were wrong. Wolf Darkness says, Destin, you are awesome. Keep it up. Thanks, Wolf. Yeah, you always got my back. I appreciate it. The FTC cannot make those showings as noted. Sony Group CEO recently acknowledged the financial and technical difficulties. Yeah, this is just a great own, because Sony came out and said, yeah, cloud gaming's super tough. They just gave Microsoft the W. Anyway, as noted, Sony's Group CEO recently acknowledged the financial and technical difficulties cloud gaming faces. And even if the FTC had evidence of what this segment would look like in the future, it is wholly speculative that Xbox would participate in it in a meaningful way. I think they would, but yeah, I think they would for sure. The FTC cannot show that the merger will result in vertical foreclosure in the console or gaming services markets. The FTC alleges a single theory of harm. Vertical foreclosure. Courts appropriately place a heavy burden on the government in a vertical merger because vertical mergers often generate efficiencies and other pro-competitive effects. Oh, that's interesting. So they're actually saying often vertical mergers are good for the industry. US versus AT&T. Lot of citation here. Oh my God, lots of citations, sorry. Vertical integration is ubiquitous in our economy and virtually never poses a threat to competition when undertaken unilaterally and in competitive markets. These considerations apply with particular force here, as the merger will make Activision games more accessible to consumers. And I mean, like, they're going to be available on the Switch, and they'll be available on Game Pass. So that's, and all the streaming services that they wouldn't have come to in the past. Anyway, the FTC's central claim is that the combined firm would withhold certain Activision content, in particular COD from Sony, the longtime market leader. You know, I was just thinking, if the FTC really wanted to make a case about how the cloud gaming sector would be negative, they would have to prove that the added difficulty of making a cloud game service game could reduce in a worsening of the product. And I feel like they'd have a stronger argument there, but they never make the arguments that I think would hold more water for the industry and for the courts. They're just like, oh, we'll be so in trouble if we lose Call of Duty, right? But instead, they don't make good arguments, in my opinion. And they make up these markets like, oh, PlayStation and Xbox are in a market of their own. And it's strange to me. It's strange to me that they don't talk about like the impact to labor and how you'll have to work at Microsoft to do stuff like this. Like, I want them to have stronger arguments, but the arguments that they go with stink, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about Sony's arguments and the FTC's arguments, but I feel like they've been very weak. And if they would have argued that, hey, this is going to be worse for jobs, and that this is going to be worse for the gaming industry because of how it will restructure Activision, or Activision will be forced to also support cloud gaming, and that'll be a negative gaming experience. I feel like that's a stronger argument than this nonsense that they're trying to peddle. Somebody did a piece once explaining why it worked, though. Hargeet says, hey, Destin, was hoping to meet in person in LA. I was hanging out with Idlesoft. Maybe next time. I did get to meet Ryan. Good luck to Microsoft next week. Thank you. Sorry I missed that. Yeah, I was just like, I was driving back and forth between home, and the commute home is quite a bit. So I didn't make it, unfortunately. I wanted to see Idle and everybody, but I didn't make it out. It wasn't like a snub or anything, but glad you get to check out the stream. The FTC's central claim is that the combined firm will withhold certain Activision content, in particular COD from Sony, the longtime market leader, in citing such foreclosure as its basis for opposing the transaction. The FTC must prove, among other things, that the combined company would have the incentive to withhold COD from rivals to whom an independent Activision would otherwise sell COD, i.e., that doing so would be profitable despite the foregone Activision sales. And you can't prove that because the math proves it's not true. Hargeet. Did I say it incorrectly? Apologies. Where was I? That rivals cannot effectively compete without COD and could not offset any harm through competitive response, and that competition, as opposed to individual competitors, would likely be harmed. The FTC cannot make these showings. Yeah, they can't prove that. It's the CMA already tried to do it and they screwed up their math. So it's, yeah. The FTC cannot show a substantial likelihood of harm in the gaming console market. No incentive. This element is simple. Microsoft is committed not to withhold from anyone by signing binding contracts to bring COD on non-discriminatory terms to Nintendo and multiple different cloud gaming providers. The FTC must account for these economic realities in trying to meet its burden, rather than relying on assumptions and simplifications that are not supported by real-world facts. Barnes & Noble citation. And ignore economic reality. Another citation. The government fails to do so. As further proof of its lack of incentive, Microsoft has offered to provide Activision content to Sony for the next decade, next 10 years. The only plausible reason why Sony has declined to sign is not because it fears foreclosure, which it could prevent with the stroke of a pen, but because it believes this transaction will make third-place Xbox a more effective competitor. And just a personal note here, that would be good for competition. Sony is presumably worried that putting Activision games in Game Pass day and date will increase consumer interest in subscription services, a business model Sony believes is less profitable than making consumers pay $70 for each new release. But that belief is a reason to approve this deal, because the antitrust laws were enacted for the protection of competition, not competitors. That's a very important note, I feel like that's just not being considered. The whole argument is about protecting Sony. It's not about protecting the industry. It's not about protecting jobs. It's not about protecting consumers. The whole way the FTC phrased their argument was about protecting Sony. And that's my problem with it. Who cares about Sony? You have to make an argument that this would be bad for the entire gaming industry, and you exclude everyone but Sony. Like, what are you doing? You hurt your own case by phrasing it that way, in my opinion. Anyway, the antitrust laws do not protect a dominant firm's profit margin. Even setting aside the offer, withholding COD would harm Xbox economically. See Seawell Plastics, some other case, rejecting antitrust claim where defendants had no economic incentive to lock out existing suppliers and raise the cost of an input. Xbox will be losing COD revenues on the largest console provider, Sony. Those revenues were critical to the price Microsoft paid for Activision, the board's evaluation of the transaction, and the financial targets to which Xbox is held accountable. Withholding would cause even greater harm by degrading the game and infuriating gamers. A significant appeal of COD is that it is a multiplayer game often played by groups across different platforms, including PlayStation, known as crossplay. A lot of citations in this, so I'm just skipping over that. Having a broad community of gamers ensures players can easily find groups of comparable skill levels, making the game fun. Removing COD from PlayStation would dramatically shrink the community, making the gaming experience worse for anyone left. It would be pretty drastic just across the board if they got rid of COD on PlayStation, and they've been very clear about that. Microsoft's acquisition of Mojang's Minecraft franchise. Okay, we've heard this argument. Anyway, I'll just read the document. It illustrates why all of these incentives cut against withholding. Like COD, Minecraft is a popular franchise with substantial cross-platform play. Under the reasoning advanced by the FTC, Xbox would have had incentives to make Minecraft exclusive to Xbox. It did not and has not since. On the contrary, Xbox has expanded access to the game and continues to release new editions available on PlayStation. Indeed, defendants are not aware of any situation where a publisher has chosen to take exclusive an existing game franchise that is multiplayer and offers cross-platform play. Now, that categorization is important. They said they haven't made a multiplayer cross-platform game exclusive, because everybody would point to Starfield, and I'll be interested to see if Redfall's in here, but Redfall was like, oh, look, they made Redfall exclusive, and now Sony's like, oh, never mind. Because if they bring up Redfall was a commercial disaster, right? So if they bring that up, it solidifies their point that not every game's a guaranteed success. So I think avoid Redfall if Sony, or I keep saying Sony, the FTC, if they say, well, you took Redfall away from Sony, Microsoft would be like, yeah, it was a disaster. And look what happened. It just proves our point that not every game is a guaranteed hit. Anyway. Defendants are not aware of any situation where a publisher has chosen to take exclusive an existing franchise that is multiplayer and offers cross-platform play away. There is no reason to believe this would be the first. The government's two responses to this straightforward logic are unavailing. The FTC preliminary relies on its expert, Dr. Lee, who claims withholding will be profitable. He arrives at that conclusion by purporting to simulate the likely increase in Xbox purchases as a result of withholding, the demand model, and analyzing how profitable withholding would be for Xbox, the foreclosure analysis. The linchpin of his conclusion is that withholding COD would result in a 5% increase in Xbox's console share. Dr. Lee initially tried to justify his prediction with his demand model, but defendants expert Dr. Carlton demonstrated that it had serious conceptual flaws. That's interesting. I think this is the first time we've heard about Mr. and Mrs. Dr. Lee. Anyway. Dr. Lee then pivoted, saying that his demand model, it's a Mr. His demand model is distinct and separate from his foreclosure model and tried to justify the 5% figure based on cherry-picked documents. Lee rebutted at 6. Even assuming that is a proper rule for an expert, which it is not, the sources do not support his conclusion. And Dr. Carlton further shows that Dr. Lee's foreclosure analysis relies on multiple false assumptions and that correcting for them shows that any foreclosure strategy would in fact be unprofitable. And they destroyed that argument with the CMA. Carlton rep, ultimately, Lee's analysis provides no basis to disregard the real world where Sony has a favorable offer to COD. Xbox has made plain that it wants to provide COD to Sony and in fact needs to continue to sell to Sony, and regulators around the world all agree that withholding COD from Sony would be unprofitable and is thus not a serious concern. Everybody has thrown this out the window. The FTC's strained analogy, did my stream drop or something? Dropping by like 100 concurrence for some reason. The FTC's strained analogy to Microsoft's acquisition of ZeniMax, a fundamentally different game developer, likewise fails to establish, this is their argument actually about ZeniMax, so I'm going to highlight that really quick. Likewise fails to establish that COD would become exclusive. The first two ZeniMax games Xbox released post-acquisition, Deathloop and Ghostwire, were exclusives for Sony. And then they probably talk about Redfall here and then like, yeah, we don't really want to talk about Redfall. The ZeniMax story thus says nothing about what Xbox would do with an existing multiplayer cross-platform franchise like COD. The relevant analogy there is Minecraft. I mean, they could have brought up Elder Scrolls Online. They could have brought up Fallout 76, which, it bounced back for some reason. I don't know what happened. It like dipped by like 200 concurrence and then it jumped back up. I don't know. Anyway. The argument is about Elder Scrolls or Starfield or Redfall. So those three games, they're not going to talk about Redfall anymore because it was a commercial disaster and it solidifies Microsoft's point. So like, well, what about Starfield? That could have been on PlayStation 5. Yeah, it could have. Anyway, no ability. There is likewise no reason to think that Xbox could foreclose PlayStation by withholding COD. If every PlayStation device that accounted for as little as 2 hours of COD per month were somehow to transform into an Xbox device overnight, PlayStation would still comfortably outnumber Xboxes. If any such shift occurred between Xbox and PlayStation, that would serve only to make the console market less concentrated and more competitive. But the existence of such an extreme shift is implausible. Nintendo outcompetes Xbox, even though it does not currently have access to COD. Likewise, Steam, the leading PC game store, has also risen in popularity without COD. There is no doubt why the FTC tries to exclude Nintendo and PC from the console market. They are proof that COD is not essential to competition. It's a very strong argument, and the reason I'm emphasizing it so much is because the FTC's argument eliminates most of the game industry to make their argument. And Microsoft is like, that's nonsense. You're saying we don't compete with Nintendo? It's just nonsense. Anyway, moreover, any claim that Xbox could foreclose PlayStation would need to take account of Sony's ability to respond competitively, requiring assessment of competitive response. The myriad options available to Sony are fatal to the FTC's case. Sony could lower prices or improve quality of its console, and they're probably going to release a new console, right? It could invest in other first-party or third-party games, as it recently did with Bungie in a deal the FTC quickly cleared. Or, as Sony's CEO told investors in the wake of the news Microsoft's acquisition of Activision, it could grow Sony's own studios organically to increase Sony's own value proposition to consumers. Interesting. These likely competitive responses are integral to antitrust analysis, but the FTC simply ignores them. The long-term effects of any proposed merger will depend in large measure on competitors' responses. Rejecting challenge to exclusivity agreements between incumbent newspapers and content creators because any rival newspaper deprived of access even to the best known content can compete on the basis of alternative content. Innovate. Come up with a different strategy. Sony's been buying all these little studios. Like, they're gearing up to compete with this. You're already seeing the positive effects of the acquisition on the Sony side. So anyway, no harm to competition. In any event, even if Microsoft could be expected to make COD exclusive, the FTC has not shown harm to competition. The entirety of the FTC's analysis is Dr. Lee's assertion. I don't know. I didn't read the Dr. Lee stuff, so I'll have to check that out. That any exclusivity that would result from the merger must necessarily be anti-competitive because it reduces the availability of a single company's games on a single company's platform. Complaining making COD exclusive would result in diminished consumer choice that is not the law. Rejecting the proposition that foreclosing a competitor from a previously available input is sufficient to demonstrate a lessening of competition. They're rejecting it. Okay. Exclusivity agreements, whether from contract or vertical integration, are ubiquitous throughout the economy and are usually pro-competitive. Indeed, both Sony and Nintendo have entered into a wide range of exclusivity agreements of their own various game publishers, and each has far more exclusive gaming content than Xbox does. Dr. Lee himself has recognized in his prior academic work about gaming that such arrangements can be pro-competitive. So to Dr. Lee, the guy arguing against it, Fonz called me out on the RDX about what, Alex? Anyway. This transaction also does not exhibit, the FTC's motion does not address any of the special features that have led courts in unusual cases to conclude that vertical integration will give rise to anti-competitive outcomes. In particular, COD is not a necessary input for Xbox rivals. And any foreclosure percentages would be far too small to warrant any presumption of competitive harm. Telling Dr. Lee never seeks to show that competition would be harmed such that Xbox would be able to raise console or game prices. I mean, they probably will raise the price of Game Pass, but I think they're at capacity. I do think the deal goes through. Still, never really faltered on that one. This is make or break, though. Microsoft has said this kills the deal if it goes on too long. So this is like it. This is the case that will determine if it goes through or not. Anyway. In short, the FTC cannot show what it must to justify blocking this vertical transition, that the supposed withholding of COD would make the combined company's rivals ineffective as competitors. They can't prove that. Vertical integration is generally found to raise antitrust concerns where it leaves rivals stunted as competitors and materially impairs their ability to discipline the defendant's prices. Issue is whether exclusive, there's a bunch of citation here, I'm a little lost. Issue is whether exclusive dealing keeps competitors below the critical level necessary to pose a real threat. Alex never told me what I got called out for. I get called out all the time. So at Destin, tell me what I got called out for by the Xbox guys. Not block? Question mark? Maybe. The defendant's market power. Anyway, discussing Brown Shoe and DuPont and concluding that we are unwilling to assume that any vertical foreclosure lessens competition. Finally, the FTC ignores critical variables in the economic analysis by disregarding the new options the merger will create for playing Activision content, cloud gaming. Increased output is a clear Increased output is a clear indicator of a merger's competitive impact. Interesting. Practices that expand output and improve quality are pro-competitive. Here, the acquisition would benefit consumers by making COD available on Microsoft's Game Pass on the day it is released on console, with no price increase for the service based on the acquisition. On Nintendo and on other services that allow cloud streaming, example, and Activision has historically refused to provide any type of access to COD on the cloud. I'm assuming they're saying these clear consumer benefits likewise eviscerate, strong wording. These clear consumer benefits eviscerate the FTC's case. I just like that word eviscerate. That's like, the case is destroyed. Let's keep going for a little bit more, and then I might, oh man, I'm just getting like more viewers, so I guess I'll just keep going. The FTC cannot show a substantial likelihood of harm in the putative, I haven't heard that word, punitive, but like putative, content library and cloud gaming service markets. With respect to the console market, the FTC at least purports to offer a quantitative analysis, however flawed, of likely foreclosure effects, but it makes no such pretense when it turns to the putative markets for content library and cloud gaming subscription services. Even if those gaming features were wrongly considered separate markets, the FTC's claims regarding content library and cloud gaming services would fail. Indeed, the FTC does not even allege, let alone substantiate, any allegation that the merger will likely cause the withholding of content that Activision would otherwise provide to third-party content library or cloud gaming providers. Alex got real quiet in chat. Alex, what happened? No problem. Toritar? I don't mind at all. As a threshold matter, the FTC misconceives the law, even accepting the government's framing of the standard. The question is whether this merger will likely lead to a substantial lessening of competition. Whether the world with this merger is likely to be substantially less competitive than the but-for world without it. Oh my goodness. The FTC does not even purport to make that showing as to content library subscription services and cloud gaming subscription services. Instead, Dr. Lee contends that he need only show that an independent Activision is somewhat more likely than the combined company would be to support particularly content library and cloud gaming services. Okay. Where were we here? But that is not enough under the law. Dr. Lee instead, at a minimum, must be willing to show that an independent Activision would likely support such services and that the combined firm likely would not. Rejecting the claim of increased coordination risk given the government's experts' concession that he was not in a position to say that coordination is more likely to happen than not. Dr. Lee is not willing to make that representation, which doomed the government's case here, just like it did in AT&T. Sometimes it's hard to read because there's a ton of like citation that they go to here. Anyway. More generally, to carry its burden as the content library and cloud gaming markets, the FTC must prove that all of the following claims are likely true. In fact, none is true. First, the FTC must prove that, but for this merger, Activision would allow COD to be included in third-party content library or cloud gaming services. Oh yeah, and Activision has very clearly said no to that. Their older games, sure, but yeah. This merger could only increase access to COD on these services to the benefit of consumers, as cloud provider NVIDIA agrees. Second, the FTC must then prove that the post-merger combined company would likely withhold COD from subscription services and cloud gaming sector services. Again, however, the FTC does not even try to make that showing, nor could it, particularly in light of the binding contracts Microsoft has already struck with NVIDIA and other cloud providers. Third, the FTC must additionally prove that any post-merger withholding would substantially lessen competition. It cannot do so because exclusivity agreements are ubiquitous. Sony and Nintendo already use them more than Microsoft does, and as discussed above, they raise no competitive concerns except in narrow circumstances involving substantial market power and large foreclosure percentages, neither of which is present here. Fourth, as to the cloud gaming market, the FTC must prove that cloud gaming will develop in the near to immediate term as a genuine alternative to consoles or performance PCs, in particular for multiplayer, fast twitch graphics intensive games such as COD. They set themselves up there. They said, these are the high-end gaming console markets, but also cloud gaming is dangerous. It's like, well, wait a minute. So the Switch doesn't work, but but you're worried about the cloud gaming? Like, I don't feel like it works. Anyway. What is happening in chat right now? Anyway. The FTC can show no such thing as Sony admits network engineers are nowhere close to solving the immense technological challenges presented by that cloud gameplay model, which is one of the reasons why Activision refuses to make COD available for cloud gaming. And there is no basis for blocking a merger on speculation, based on speculation about harm to non-existent markets that are unlikely to materialize anytime in the foreseeable future. Fifth, the FTC could establish that a cloud gaming market will develop. It would also have to show that Xbox will be a major player in it. Otherwise, it would have no cloud gaming business to promote through exclusivity agreements. The FTC cannot substantiate that speculation either because they'll give it to anybody. They'll just let anybody have it. The equities weigh against a preliminary injunction. The FTC's failure to demonstrate a likelihood of ultimate success means there is no reason to consider the equities, but in any event, the equities, both public and private, weigh against granting the extraordinary and drastic remedy the agency requests. As a threshold matter, Microsoft's merger with Activision does not implicate the principal public equity consideration that Congress had in mind when it enacted Section 13B, namely the need to maintain the pre-merger status quo so the FTC can award effective relief if it succeeds on the merits. This consideration applies chiefly to the context of horizontal mergers where two competing companies integrate their operations and, in the process, often eliminate stores, factories, and or other redundant assets, making it difficult to unscramble the merger. Thank you for all the hearts, everybody. I see all the reactions down there. Thanks, Mark Smith. I appreciate that. Microsoft's vertical merger with Activision, however, raises none of these concerns. FTC, Microsoft, and Activision are not competitors in the relevant markets alleged, and Microsoft intends to operate Activision similar to other recent acquisitions, such as Minecraft developer Mojang. In other words, Activision's creative operations will remain separate and continue to run as they did pre-merger. Consequently, even in the unlikely event the FTC continues to press its Part 3 case and then succeeds on the ultimate merits in that proceeding, the agency can order Microsoft's divestiture of Activision, an effective ultimate remedy. FTC versus Great Lakes Chem Corp. As a citation. As a result, the principal public equity cuts against the government. In addition, granting a preliminary injunction would... Oh, here it is. Here's the big bombshell. In addition, granting a preliminary injunction would kill the deal, robbing consumers of the beneficial economic effects and pro-competitive advantages resulting from this merger, including increased availability of the Activision content. Yeah, long story short, if they grant the preliminary injunction, deal's dead. That's what Microsoft's saying. And that's why the case is so important. That's why I'm reading this document, because everything depends on this, right? Anyway. By contrast, there is no risk that consumers would be injured while the administrative process runs its course. Sony's existing contract for COD runs through 2024, and it has an offer for much longer access. Interesting. So basically what they're saying is the preliminary injunction will kill the case. We can still litigate this for a year. We feel that confident that you will lose. So yeah. For the foregoing reasons, Microsoft respectfully requests that the court deny the FTC's motion for a preliminary injunction. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the preliminary injunction was granted temporarily. And now Microsoft's saying, like, if you do this, because I believe the FTC is requesting through December. Now, Microsoft has no issue taking this to trial over the next week and like coming to a conclusion at the end of that. But right now it's just like, What are you doing? All right, so now we get into this. I think that's the entirety of the document. So what is this? This is at 8:30 a.m. Beth Wilkinson, I believe, is on Activision side. So when was this? When was this response filed? 8:30. Okay, June 22nd. 8:30. Wait. We're on page what? 23? You guys don't remember what page we were on? No, I'm just kidding. We're closer to 30. Okay, all right. So I think they're alleging the case time, 8:30. And if I remember right, Beth Wilkinson was in the preliminary hearing. The TRO was granted? What's the TRO? Anyway. The temporary restraining order was granted. For how long? Was granted. Now FTC has to prove their case in court where Microsoft and Activision can actually speak up for themselves. So yeah, they have the rest of the month to prove their case, right? But then after that, the temporary restraining order, 2 weeks. That's what I was looking for. I couldn't find that. Thank you so much, chat. I was wondering how long the temporary restraining order was. 2 weeks. That's perfect. I'm like really excited to see the outcome of this. I've been covering this for like a year. The first time I started covering this was when the Brazil documents were made public. So you can like go back and look, and we read through those documents. Do you guys want to continue reading? Like see what else is in here? Because this is the declaration of Beth Wilkins in support of the defendant's memorandum of law. So maybe Beth Wilkins is the Microsoft representative or the Activision representative, and they're going to say a lot of the same stuff, but let's continue forward. I saw people like freaking out on Twitter like there's some big bombshell in here. Everything that they said is stuff that they've said throughout the last year. So let's continue on. I, Beth Wilkinson, declare as follows. I am counsel of record for Microsoft in this action. I have personal knowledge of fact. Oh, so she filed it. Anyway, facts stated in this declaration, and if called as a witness, I could and would testify competently these facts under oath. Attached as exhibits to this declaration are true and correct copies of each of the following documents. So there's an excerpt report of Dr. Elizabeth M. Bailey. There's the Epic Games maker of Fortnite saw its value raised by $17 billion in 8 years. These are the court documents. This is the stuff where you get the real meat. When like you see the citations, that's where you get the really interesting stuff usually. Anyway. Epic raises $2 billion. Sony corporate report 2022. That's public. Sony chief warns technical problems persist for cloud gaming. That was recent. That was 6/3. Activision press release. Activision Blizzard completes King acquisition, becomes the largest game network in the world with over 500 million users. Microsoft to acquire. EA press release. This is just all the documentation. And then down here, they have the exhibits. Okay, we're like done. Because it's like a bunch of blank exhibits that they can't reveal. So here's one of the sources that they've included in their court filing, right? Epic Games maker of Fortnite saw its value raised by $17 billion in 8 years. We all know Fortnite was a mega hit, right? This is Microsoft saying, look, one game can make a substantial difference in a company's portfolio. $17 billion for one game, right? So that was exhibit 5, where exhibit 6 is redacted. Epic raises $2 billion, and I think Sony invested the $2 billion. It raised $2 billion, yeah, in funding from Sony and Kirkby. I haven't heard of them. But yeah, Sony invested heavily in Epic Games. What's the next one here? They just you couldn't like crop that? Is that like a lawyer thing? Exhibit 7, blank, 8 is blank. Yeah, so we're going through the exhibits. This is the stuff that they filed to the courts so that people can see. And sometimes you get like fun stuff in here under seal. All right. Sony chief warns technical problems persist for cloud gaming. This was on 6/3, right? Promise of technology remains unfulfilled after more than a decade of development. Beth, if you ever watch these, just once, just throw an exhibit like 17, and Destin thinks the deal is fine. I would laugh. Tom Warren was actually in one of these. He's like, oh, hey. It's sort of funny that like the lawyers have to read all of our stuff and talk about it. Open chat now. Obviously super chats get priority just as they had the whole thing. But if anybody wants to ask any questions, to @Destin, because it highlights it for me and I won't miss it. And then we can talk about it. Sony's chief executive has warned that cloud gaming is still technically very tricky, playing down the risk to the console maker of the industry quickly converting to a technology on which its rival Microsoft has bet heavily. In an interview with the Financial Times, Kenichiro Yoshida said the PlayStation creator would still study various options in the future for streaming games over the internet itself, adding it could utilize GT Sophie, its AI, to enhance cloud gaming. I think cloud itself is an amazing business model, but when it comes to games, the technical difficulties are high, Yoshida said, citing latency, the fast response times demanded by gamers as the biggest issue. Absolutely correct. Everybody just wants me to slap my quads. So there will be challenges to cloud gaming, but we want to take on those challenges. So continuing on, basically they admit cloud gaming is very hard, and there's a reason why not that many people are in cloud gaming right now. Like Stadia tried and failed, and that was Google, right? NVIDIA is probably the best. Who does cloud gaming in chat? Anybody? I think the best is NVIDIA. And then maybe the Samsung TVs. All right, here we go. We got another. Oh, this is from Activision. So this is Exhibit 35. Activision Blizzard completes King acquisition, becomes the largest game network in the world with over 500 million users. Activision, what is this? Activision Blizzard and King Digital. This is when they acquired King. This is like a million years ago. In internet days, anyway. 36. Here we go. Microsoft. Oh, my tummy is. I think I'm hungry. This is Exhibit 36. Sony is getting in the cloud gaming. They just recently announced its addition to PlayStation Plus. I saw something about that, Sephiroth. I'll have to check it out. I think it's something about their new games being to go in there. Nathaniel asks, that's my son's name. One of my son's names. Once the deal is done, what do you think Xbox will do with the IP? Nothing. Honestly, I think they're just going to keep it how it is currently. Microsoft to acquire Activision Blizzard and bring the joy to everybody. This is like their initial filing where they said, we plan to bring it to everybody. And they've stuck with that. Oh, got another one here. This is comments to the European Commission. This is where they said, yeah, we're fine. Oh, this one's probably going to. Oh, that's why the document's 100 and something pages, because they filed the whole EU response there. PS5 versus PS5 Digital Edition. Which PlayStation 5 is the best choice in 2023? PlayStation also offers multiple SKUs, is their argument there, right? I think this is a very strong rebuttal by Microsoft. PlayStation Pro and Slim, everything we've heard so far. They're talking about how there's a rumored PlayStation 5 Slim, which PlayStation won't release because it would hurt their case. Nintendo Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom sells 10 million copies in 3 days. I do call him Nate, Scott. Because my son's, well, I'll just say my two kids' names rhyme, so I call one Nate and the other one his name. What else we got here? PlayStation boss says cloud gaming has too many technical difficulties. Just another citation about cloud gaming. And Sony saying cloud gaming doesn't make any sense. Like, it has to destroy the FTC's case when they're like, everybody is out there saying that it's really tough to do cloud gaming, right? Cloud has a lot of potential and Xbox sees it. Do you think Sony following Xbox validates cloud potential? No, because they still don't know if it's going to be successful. And I think it's going to be successful. Well, I think if they do it correctly, it could be successful. We'll see. Delta says, slap them quads. I don't want to do, I'll do it before I close. I'll do that as the big closer, everybody. So you got to stick around to the end and I'll do an outro where I slap them quads. And then there's a document here about when Mojang, oh my God, Mojang joined Microsoft. Microsoft didn't mislead EU over ZeniMax deal. Watch that. MLEX is usually locked, I think. So let's check out what they say here. Microsoft didn't mislead EU over ZeniMax deal, Watchdog says in response to U.S. concerns. Oh, we actually already know this. So, yeah. The EU is like, no, they didn't mislead us. And the FTC said they did. That was about the Starfield thing. Sony Interactive Entertainment to acquire leading independent video game developer Bungie. This went through without an issue. This was $6.8 billion. I can't remember how much they paid. This is billions of dollars. Nobody cared when Sony bought Bungie. And it's very similar. Like, it's a less amount of money. But yeah. My main problem with the whole FTC case is their case, they did it in a way where they're weaker than they could be. This is a secondary. Beth, you put the same document in the exhibits twice. Sony CEO downplays risk of cloud gaming on console market. Oh, whoa. Okay. So they have a document where the Sony CEO says, not only is it really hard to do, but also there's no risk for the console market. And the FTC's whole argument is that it could hurt the console market. Right? Wow. Okay. Well, there goes that one. I think cloud itself is an amazing business model, but when it comes to games, the technical difficulties are too high. That's funny. Yoshida also highlighted the cost and efficiencies of cloud gaming as servers are idle for most of the day as gamers mainly play during the evening or dark time. The dark time for cloud gaming has been an issue for Microsoft as well as Google, but it was meaningful that we were able to use those quieter hours for AI learning, Yoshida told the Financial Times. That's funny. So you have Sony backing up everything said. Sony will keep acquiring game studios to sustain virtuous cycle of success. I missed this one. This was in April of last year. During its latest episode of the PlayStation podcast, Jim Ryan suggested the company's proactive approach to M&As will create a virtuous cycle where success begets success. PlayStation's done just fine. Nothing's going to happen to PlayStation. And the people who are against the deal going through, they're just like, we don't want anything to happen to the current cycle. Do you think Game Pass will include a WoW subscription? Oh, that's the one I hope so. Turn your live stream ads off. I just turned on monetization. Does it keep hitting you with ads or something like that? Does the stream keep hitting mid-rolls? Is that why concurrents drop? Oh, okay. Well, I won't do that next time. That would explain why concurrents are dropping by like 200. Got it. Okay. And then they bounce back. All right. Well, I mean, it's how I get paid, but I don't like that because I was almost at 2,000 concurrents. Anyway, that's what I see. Let me see what I got here. So I have a tab open. I'm just going to try and find this really quick. A lot of stuff from Florian Mueller. But there was one about... Here it is. So this newest report, this is from June 2nd. And people are asking about Lena Khan, right? So check this. Somebody asked the question about Lena Khan. Something... You can turn off monetization and still get supers. I turned on mid-rolls. I didn't realize that kicks people out of it. That's stupid. I won't do that next time. FTC chair, I was going to do a whole story about this, but FTC chair Lena Khan accused of abuse of power in new U.S. House probe. Washington, June 1st. The House Oversight Committee's chairman, James Comer, opened a probe Thursday into U.S. Federal Trade Commission Chair Lena Khan's management of the agency, citing complaints of abuse of power. Khan has angered companies and trade groups like the Chamber of Commerce by pushing the FTC, which enforces antitrust law and laws against deceptive marketing, to be more aggressive in investigations and law enforcement. In a letter to Khan and agency officials dated Thursday, Comer cited complaints made by former Commissioner Christine Wilson, a Republican. A lot of people have criticized Christine, but the complaints were as follows. We are concerned that the developments at the commission, cataloged by Commissioner Wilson and others, could undermine consumers and markets' confidence in the commission's ability to perform its functions effectively and with integrity, Comer wrote in the letter. So basically, Lena Khan is having some issues. Let's say this whole deal falls apart hypothetically, right? Do you think Activision has publicly said in their blogs that we're going to continue to remain professional with Sony, but we're very disappointed in them. So let's say their $70 billion deal falls apart. The one that the devs want, the one that the devs want, the investors want, Bobby Kotick wants it, obviously, because he gets a huge payday and he can probably get out of the industry if he chooses to finally. And yeah, everybody seems to want it, except for like the FTC and the CMA. And even the CMA, like the CMA's reason for blocking is so flimsy. Let's see what else we got here. What else do we got here? I don't have a whole lot else to go over. So I'm just going to take questions from chat for the last few minutes. Actually, you know what? There was an interesting article over on trustedreviews.com. And I wanted to get your take on it. I think Ryan is trolling. But I'll just show it to you really quick. Starfield is convincing me to ditch my PS5 for an Xbox Series X, right? Okay. Opinion: behind every successful console, there's usually a flagship exclusive game that's been so popular it's been deemed a system seller. I mean, the problem PlayStation has is everything's still been on the PlayStation 4. So, yeah. Sony has typically excelled at supporting its console with these system-selling games. The PlayStation 1 had Metal Gear Solid. The PlayStation 2 had Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, albeit a timed exclusive. The PS3 had The Last of Us, and the PS4 had God of War up through Ragnarok. The excellent track record is the main reason why I've stayed loyal to the brand for all these years. PlayStation makes great games. And if you want the best experience for those games, you play them on PlayStation 5, right? His argument is, though, where are the PlayStation 5 exclusive consoles? PlayStation adopted a strategy where they were like, we believe in generations, right? They got criticized for that quote, but then they didn't fulfill it. I can't think of I think Gran Turismo 7 is their first next-gen only game. And beyond that, there hasn't been much more aside from that. I play God of War Ragnarok on my PlayStation 5. I finished Death Stranding Director's Cut on my PlayStation 5. I play a lot on PlayStation 5. I'll be playing Final Fantasy 16. The idea that this article is basically commenting on Phil Spencer saying there's no world where people start selling their PS5s. And he's like, hey, I might sell mine. Starfield might make me sell mine. Sorry, the text is super small. So, but now we're just over 2 years into the cycle, and there's no sign that system selling PS5 exclusive launching anytime soon. Sure, the PS5 has seen the launch of games such as God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West, but both were also available on PS4, so cannot realistically be considered as system sellers. I guess if you got a Pro, we can go from there. Nighthawk with the super chat, $1.99. Can the FTC change their reason to block like the CMA did? I think they're too far into it right now to make changes. And their argument is weak AF. And my frustration is they could have made such a better case that I think most people could have gotten behind, right? Let's say the argument was we have data that proves that this acquisition will result in worse products for the consumer, right? They don't have data to back that up. Or that the job sector market would be so negatively impacted that there's just not enough options for people to work. That's actually what the gamers case tried to argue. And I feel like they were onto something there. But the FTC just said, well, this might hurt PlayStation. So everybody's like, what are you talking about? They're a Japanese company. These are two American companies who want to merge together. It was very strange. Shadow Demon says, Halo Infinite was not at SGF. It had a rough release, but in a great state with Forge co-op and Infection now. Soft re-release with certain affinities, Battle Royale-like release. Heard anything? I haven't heard anything, but I would love that. There's been a lot of, I need to catch up on the Halo stories, but there has been a lot of murmurs about what they're doing there. And I think Axios has a report about that. So we'll have to check out Halo. Let's continue on reading this article about this guy who's selling his PS5 because of Starfield. The Xbox Series X is admittedly still searching for its system seller too. It boasts successful console exclusives such as Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5, but I still wouldn't consider them as influential as any of those PlayStation exclusives listed above. I agree. But following the recent Xbox Game Showcase 2023 event, I think that the Xbox Series X system seller may be arriving sooner rather than later. Trailers for Fable, Avowed, Hellblade 2, and Forza Motorsport all impressed, but Starfield stole the spotlight. You guys might remember I got a ton of crap for my article about how Starfield is make or break for Xbox, basically. It was that over on IGN. My main argument, my main thesis about that was Starfield needs their God of War. They need their Legend of Zelda or their Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16, I realized third party. It might as well be a PlayStation exclusive though, right? Microsoft needed the answer to that, and that answer is Starfield. They've gotten ahead of the 30 frames per second thing. Everybody's sort of rumbling about that. We'll see what happens. I hope I am wrong, but it looks like the FTC wins. We'll see, Highlander. Highlander said super chat. Thank you, Highlander. So now Microsoft came. This showcase was so important for Microsoft to get right. And man, did they get it right. And it was at just the right time. Sony showcase. I love games, right? So for me, the Sony showcase was great because of the games that we'll all get to experience. But for PlayStation fans, it was not great. You know why? They showed a bunch of CGI trailers that didn't really do a good job of explaining the concept of the properties that were going to be shown. Very little gameplay was showing during their reveal. People were upset that they were spending so much time on earbuds and like all these other things. So for me, it was really cool because of the games that we're going to get to play on whatever platform we choose. And Microsoft's amazing follow-up tweet, like, hey, all these 12 games are also coming to Xbox. It was just genius, honestly. And I wish Sony would have did the exact same thing after the Xbox conference. I like knowing that I have options about where I can play games. And then I get to choose as the consumer, right? If you're a PlayStation fan, Santana, thank you so much for gifting a membership. I, as a consumer, like to know options, and then I can make the decision about what I want to play. And if you're a PlayStation fan, wouldn't it have been nice to see after the Xbox conference what games you would be able to play on your PlayStation platform? I think that would have been great. I hope we get rid of this deleting of other consoles' logos at the end of trailers and just tell us what platform things are available on. So I can watch the PlayStation conference and then say, oh, that's on PlayStation, but it's also on Xbox. So, okay, I can play on my Xbox. And then I know, oh, Final Fantasy 16 is an exclusive. I can play that over there. This conference was very important for Xbox, and they knocked it out of the park. I haven't even done my reaction or a video about the Xbox Game Showcase 2023, but it couldn't have happened at a better time. For Microsoft, for the Xbox brand. Anyway, let's continue on. Xbox showed off a huge 45-minute video presentation for Starfield, offering an in-depth look at the combat, exploration, many RPG mechanics, and more. It's clear that Starfield is made by the same studio behind the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, unleashing the player into an expansive fantasy world and letting you tackle any obstacle however you please. But Starfield is swapping knights and dragons for aliens and spaceships, allowing you to visit 1,000 different planets across multiple galaxies. And for me, I love space adventure games. So my main concerns with Starfield initially with their previous reveal was that the way it was presented in a way that felt too similar to No Man's Sky. This new presentation, perfect. It looks so different. They really did a good job of conveying how it's different this time. Dr. Grimley says, thoughts on the Fable trailer? The Fable trailer absolutely blew me away. What they're able to accomplish technologically in the Fable trailer is stunning. I can't believe it. There's a little bit of drama right now about the character model. I kind of like the character model. I found like it just looked more like a normal person as opposed to like the untenable I don't know. You talk about beauty standards, right? And how, yeah, I don't know. There's that whole argument. I haven't really thought enough about it, but honestly, I just love the Fable trailer. I didn't think about the character So yeah, normal person. That was my take on it. Oh, they used a normal person. That was the 2 seconds I thought about it. That's what I thought. And I didn't think about it anymore because I was too busy looking at the gameplay and what was happening there. I have no idea who Marlin Gaming Nation is, Alex. Anyway. The scale of Starfield looks to be unprecedented, with games such as No Man's Sky also promised the opportunity for the player to visit numerous procedurally generated alien worlds. They lacked enough content to make exploration interesting. To the credit of the developers behind No Man's Sky, the game improved substantially after launch, but it doesn't offer that grand sci-fi story that Starfield is promising. There are components of Starfield that potentially were inspired by No Man's Sky, and my whole thing was that what gameplay? Okay, using a mining laser to mine things. Use a mining laser in StarCraft or in No Man's Sky, right? So if Nick is asking like what gameplay elements are similar, the fact that you can take off from any planet and then go to any other planet, like that was a gameplay loop that was available. What else? Scanning things in the environment. Scanning thing in the environment so that you unlock XP and get points for doing that. The Budster said, how big of a deal is frame rate to you? 60 FPS is great, but not a game killer in my opinion. I don't think so either. I think they'll be fine. I think they patch in 60 like in a year or something. Like, we've heard you. Here's your 60 frames per second when the Xbox Series X 2.0 is out. Anyway. Starfield's great, he says. And then he says, of course, I'm yet to play Starfield, so there's every chance that it fails to meet the astronomical expectations that this in-depth demo has set. I think WoW explodes. Sorry. Tori Tar says, what are your thoughts on what will happen to WoW if the purchase goes through? I think WoW explodes in popularity if it's part of the Game Pass subscription. 30 FPS is fine, and I'll play on PC. Like, if you want the extra frames, play it on your PC. If you have that option, if you don't, I mean, I think it's going to be fine, man. Somebody was DMing me about how if you make adjustments with your TV at 30 FPS, like you can make pretty drastic improvements to how it looks visually on your television, but I need to read more about what he's talking about. So, here we go. If Starfield is able to deliver on its promise, then I'm going to have to consider purchasing an Xbox Series X. All my life, I've been happy to remain loyal to the PlayStation brand, with Sony leading the way with top-class exclusives, but I'm starting to sense a turning of the tide. Yep, this happens all the time in gaming, right? A company gets so big, they're so popular, they're doing everything right, and I feel like Sony got arrogant. And I'm like, Sony, like, you were the first to $70, you're charging like an upgrade fee, you're doing all these things, and I do worry that Xbox is going to go the same direction eventually, like in 5-10 years. But right now, if we can get those companies here, you know what's going to happen? Great things for us consumers. Anybody buying stuff is going to get better deals on their games. Like, they're going to be figuring out how to get like cool stuff for their games that are only available on their platform. Or better yet, that stuff goes away and everybody gets access to things. So yeah, I spent $4K money on a monitor. Well, I think it's still going to look great. Do you think COD going onto the Xbox Game Pass would make old COD safe to play? Safe? I'm not sure what you mean, Felix. Tori Tar says, I mean more like, you think they will add WoW to Game Pass? Yes. And will the expansion box price still be there always? Just your thoughts. I don't know about that one. Tori Tar deleted it. Once the deal is done, what do you think Xbox will do with the IP of Activision Blizzard? Nothing. They're going to I think they're going to keep doing what they've been doing. And then I think Raven Software owns the right to Hexen, right? So there could potentially be something there where they get into it. Anyway, so this guy's going to sell his PlayStation 5. Chat. If you're a PlayStation 5 gamer, is Starfield going to make you sell your PlayStation 5? I'm betting the answer is no. Oh my goodness. I should probably go soon and help take care of the kids, but Oh yeah, we've been going almost 2 hours. Because of hacks, like old CODs are unplayable because of hackers. Oh, I don't know. Do you think Microsoft will close out over the CMA or continue to the cat? They're going to go all the way to the cat. They'll close and then figure out everything else. What are your thoughts on PlayStation, Ubi, Xbox, Capcom, and PlayStation shows? Capcom, Greg Miller said Capcom could have been an email. That was funny. The PC shows had some interesting games. Ubisoft was pretty strong, but they always open with Just Dance. PlayStation was good from here are a bunch of games we're going to get to play in the future, but it was bad in presenting what you can expect from PlayStation over the next several years. Bring back Duke Nukem. Oh. If the Microsoft deal goes, I'm going to take 2 more questions, then I think 2 or 3 more questions, then I'm going to sign off. So just hit @Destin in the chat. And if you super chat, I'll read that, of course, but you get top priority on super chat. Oh, juicy secrets from Summer Game Fest. No, everything from Summer Game Fest is out as far as I know. I did the preview for Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty. That game looks great. The Sonic game was on the show floor. That game looks awesome. I don't have any secrets. Ryan put out a fantastic thing on IGN about Starfield, which was really cool. Which games are you currently playing? I've been trying to get back into the rhythm with the YouTube thing every day. So I've been playing the YouTube game, but Diablo 4. I'm probably going to no-life Diablo 4. Yeah. How big of a chance do you think the deal will go through? I think the deal goes through. Carl. Can you recap where things stand with the Activision Blizzard deal? That's a good way to end it, actually. So Aaron says, and I'll do the thighs. Can you recap where things stand with the Activision Blizzard deal? Long story short, an injunction has been filed by the FTC to block the deal temporarily for 2 weeks. So during the next 2 weeks, a trial is going to take place in San Francisco over 5 business days, and there will be a determination whether or not this deal goes through. Microsoft says if they fail there and the litigation continues throughout the rest of the year, then the deal's dead. If they succeed, then it's good to go. And they'll figure out the CMA stuff later. The kiddos are losing it, so I should probably go help mama. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate you hanging out. Almost 2,000 concurrents. That's nuts. And my cookies are amazing, Night Tilt. Thank you for not spreading fake news. If you like my content, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, hit the like on this video. I appreciate it. A big shout out to the members. I do have to update this list, but members, thank you for supporting. I know it's been harder because I've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes for IGN, but I really appreciate your support here. Hit that join button if you want to become a member. Be sure to check out this video that I'll put in the edit later. 752 likes. Y'all are awesome. And Alex, I'm ready for you. Bring it. Did you miss any Idea to Xbox content in the Xbox showcase? Up to now, there was usually a short part about it, wasn't there? I guess we'll have to see what happens there. All right. My son's losing it. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll catch you for the next one. Bye for now.